Okay. Damon James was a junior running back at Westfield Brockton High School in Jamestown, New York. During the first and second games of the football season, he took a lot of direct hits to the head during tackles. And on his last carry of the game, several opponents tackled him, and he again received a direct hit to his head. He managed to stumble off in a daze to the bench, but once he got to the bench, he stumbled over and he never regained consciousness. James was taken to the hospital where 3 days later the 16-year-old died. His mother stated to USA Today Sports, "No one should die playing the game they love." Some of you may have known someone who have died playing a sport in high school, and probably most of you do know someone who has been injured playing a sport in high school. According to YouthSportsAlliance.org, high school athletes suffer 2 million injuries, 500,000 doctor visits, and 30,000 hospitalizations each year. Looking into your future, your children, or maybe your future nieces and nephews could be included in those numbers. An athletic trainer was not present at either game of James's 2 football games. If there had been, there's a possibility that his death could have been preventable. Athletic trainers are healthcare professionals who do emergency care on and off the field. They do preventative treatments, they do clinical diagnosis, and they do rehabilitation for injuries. By being on the sideline of high school games and practices, trainers are there to help immediately in emergency situations. And high schools that are not required to have an athletic trainer or just choose to not hire one are putting their athletes at a higher risk for injury or even death. Therefore, it should be required by law that all high schools should hire athletic trainers. There were several factors that led to Damon James's death, but one major one was the second impact syndrome. According to SportsMD.com, this occurs when the athlete returns to the sport too early after suffering an initial concussion, and the athlete does not even need to receive a strong second force to the head to set the effects in motion for the second impact syndrome. Athletic trainers are educated in concussions and the second impact syndrome. If there had been an athletic trainer available for James during this time, he or she may have been able to notice the initial concussion and could take him out of the game and treat him for that and prevented his death by preventing the second impact syndrome. It's very scary that not all high schools do have athletic trainers. I'm an athletic training major here at Ball State, and I've experienced almost everything that athletic trainers are capable of. And just from that experience, I just know that they play a huge role in athletes' health and in their lives. Although athletic trainers are educated and knowledgeable in prevention and treatment of injuries, only 42% of high schools have access to them, according to NATA.org's article, "Athletic Trainers Fill a Necessary Niche in Secondary Schools." This low percentage is becoming a problem due to the increase in participation in high school sports. And currently there are no states that require that all their high schools in that state have to have an athletic trainer. Making this law in all the states would be the most beneficial solution to keeping high school athletes safe. They aren't only educated in concussion and spinal injuries. They do heat illnesses, sudden cardiac arrest, asthma, fractures, anything like that. Many high schools have a problem with hiring athletic trainers, mainly due to cost. According to CNN's article, "Deadly Month in High School Football," the risk of serious injuries and death at the high school level is exacerbated by the shortage of full-time athletic trainers at practices and games, due largely to cost. There is some evidence to show that athletic trainers basically make up for their own cost because of liability costs for the school if someone were to get injured, and they're preventing that from happening. Also, the salary of an athletic trainer is fairly close to the salary of a head football coach. So if the school can provide the sport and the coach, then they should be able to provide an athletic trainer to keep the athlete safe. In the last few years, the population of athletic trainers has grown tremendously, and more high schools are hiring them. There is evidence to show that because of this, injury and deaths in high school sports have been decreasing. According to the article Athletic Trainers, Some of Sports' True Heroes, a study presented at the 2012 American Academy of Pediatrics National Conference and Exhibition provided evidence that athletic trainers can be crucial in high school sports. Injury rates were 1.73 times higher in girls soccer and 1.22 times higher in women's basketball at the schools without the athletic trainers. It's also stated that the re-injury rates were significantly higher at schools that didn't have athletic trainers as well. These numbers could completely disappear if each state would just require that all high schools must have an athletic trainer. Also, in a recent sports medicine study, Douglas Casa, a professor of kinesiology, stated that nearly all of the causes of death in sports are influenced by the first 5 to 7 minutes after the injury occurs. And if athletic trainers were there, they're going to be the first responder on the field, and that's going to prevent this first 5 to 7 minutes without care that they would be summoning other medical personnel. Athletic trainers who do work in high school settings are almost never looked upon negatively. They work hard and they put in long hours and every day just to keep the athletes safe so that they can continue playing the sport that they love. There have been deaths and severe injuries involved with playing high school sports. Athletic trainers are educated healthcare professionals who are trained to prevent and care for those tragedies. Without a law requiring these athletic trainers at high schools, these tragedies will continue to happen. Athletes should feel safe whenever they're playing the sport that they love, and their parents should also feel safe while they're watching them. They should never have to go to a game feeling like their son or daughter may not come home that night. Athletic trainers should be the ones on the sidelines guaranteeing that feeling of safety. Sure.